All right, welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're going deep on something pretty huge. The first 100 days of Donald Trump's second term as president.
Second term. Wow. Can you believe it? January 20th to April 30th, 2025.
That's right. And you know, the whole idea of the first 100 days, right, goes all the way back to FDR and the Great Depression, became this instant benchmark.
Yeah, trial by fire, right. Sink or swim.
Exactly. So how'd he do? Well, first off, this was a super active 100 days, like just crazy busy. We're talking 109 executive orders,
Wow.
27 memorandums, 24 proclamations, even a new law got passed, the Laken-Riley Act.
That's a lot to unpack.
It really is. Kind of feels like a policy hurricane, right?
Definitely does.
Yeah.
So for all of you listening who want to cut through the noise and figure out what really matters,
That's what we do, right?
that's what we do. We dig deep, find the key stuff, make sense of it all, and then lay it out for you nice and clear.
Exactly. Think of us as like your Cliff's Notes to understanding what went down. And some big themes emerged, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
First off, there's immigration reform, a huge push to increase deportation.
Front center, yep.
Then you've got the return of tariffs, right. And then big limitations placed on DEI initiatives, a lot of talk about cutting federal spending.
Shrinking the government.
Shrinking the workforce, yeah. And then something we really got to talk about is this expansion of executive authority and also a foreign policy that at least initially seemed to be moving towards this kind of, I don't know, non-interventionist stance. Especially when you consider that pause on aid to Ukraine before they restarted it. So where do we even start with all this? I think we got to begin with those executive actions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, just the sheer number of executive orders signed on day one was kind of mind-blowing.
So I have
Six. I mean, more than any other president before him. And these things are numbered sequentially, you know, from 14147 to 14166. So think about that. For everyone listening, the key takeaway here isn't just how many, it's why. So many, so fast. It's like he wanted to sidestep Congress, just get things done his way right away.
Yeah, for sure. And the very first one, this one called Initial Rescissions of Harmful Executive Orders and Actions.
Well, strong title.
It was. And it basically wiped out a ton of stuff from the previous administration. It revoked 79 Biden-era actions. 68 of those were executive orders. 11 were presidential memorandums.
Big sweep.
Huge sweep. And then comes number 2, and this one's really interesting. It was called Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government.
Wow.
Yeah. Basically saying, look, I want all the agencies, you know, intelligence, justice, regulatory, to investigate anything that happened during the Biden administration that might have been politically motivated.
Targeting the deep state.
Right. Basically. So, you know, it's like boom, boom, right out of the gate. And it didn't stop there. There were early executive orders about free speech, pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords.
And
again, delaying the TikTok ban, pulling out of the WHO, declaring a national energy emergency.
So it's like he came in with this list, just checking things off, bam, bam, bam.
It really seemed like that. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, right?
Okay.
Within like the first 4 days, almost 2/3 of these executive actions, they were either exactly the same or really, really close to things that were laid out in Project 2025.
Oh, Project 2025.
Now, this is crucial, right? For everybody listening, Project 2025 wasn't just some random list of ideas. This was like a whole detailed plan to run the government put together by these conservative groups before the election even happened.
A blueprint, basically.
Totally. And the fact that Trump was acting so fast and so closely following this Project 2025, it just suggests a whole lot of planning went on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's like they were ready to go day one, knew exactly what they wanted to do.
And the fact that these groups had so much influence is pretty significant. But all this speed, all this action, it didn't come without controversy. A lot of legal experts were saying, hold on a second, some of this stuff might not even be legal.
Right, overstepping his authority, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like ignoring federal laws, violating the Constitution, that kind of thing. So naturally, there were lawsuits, a bunch of them.
Predictable, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And then when judges started blocking some of these orders, things got even more heated. People in the administration started criticizing the judges. Some Republicans in Congress even talked about impeaching them.
Wow. So it was like a power struggle right from the start.
Totally. A big one. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. We got to talk about this whole DOGE thing.
DOGE, you mean the meme?
Not exactly. This is the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE for short. It's actually kind of a wild story how this thing got started. It all goes back to Elon Musk summer of 2024. He's on X, what used to be Twitter.
Right.
And he throws out this idea like, hey, what if we had a government efficiency commission?
Like a super consultant.
Totally. And Trump, he loved the idea. He even said publicly, yeah, I'd love to get Elon involved in this.
So a government agency inspired by a tweet? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It is, right. It shows you how things work these days. But anyway, in September 2024, Trump officially announces this commission, and he specifically credits Elon Musk's tweet as the inspiration. He says they're going to do this full audit of the government, figure out where all the money's going, how everything's performing.
Classic government reform, right? Make it leaner, meaner.
Exactly. And the New York Times actually pointed out that this wasn't a totally new idea. We've had similar efforts before, like Theodore Roosevelt had his Keep Commission, Reagan had his Grace Commission, even Al Gore had his Reinventing Government thing.
Right. So it's not the goal that's new, it's the players.
Exactly. And the biggest player of all, well, after the election, Trump announces that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be the co-chairs of this DOGE thing.
Wow, so it's serious.
Oh, yeah, they meant business. The goal was to dismantle bureaucracy, cut regulations, slash spending, basically restructure the whole government.
Ambitious.
Huge. Of course, Ramaswamy ended up leaving to run for governor of Ohio.
Right.
But the point is, they were ready to shake things up. Then, right after the inauguration, it's official. DOGE is born, by executive order, of course. We've got the Department of Government Efficiency, that's the main one.
Okay.
Then there's the United States DOGE Service, or USDS, which was basically the old U.S. digital service, but they revamped it.
Repurposed it.
Exactly. And then there's this thing called the DOGE Service Temporary Organization.
Temporary.
Yeah. It was supposed to sunset on July 4th, 2026. So it was like this rapid response team within agencies trying to push through these reforms fast.
Interesting. So how did DOGE actually work within the government?
Well, they sent these teams of 4 people into every agency. You'd have a leader, an engineer, an HR specialist, and a lawyer. Their job was to figure out how to make things more efficient.
Like a SWAT team for bureaucracy.
Basically, yeah. But there's one more thing about DOGE that's pretty important. All their documents, everything they did, it's classified as presidential records.
Really?
Yeah. Which means the public can't see any of it until at least 2034.
So much for transparency.
Yeah. Right. It raises some questions, that's for sure. And it's worth pointing out, DOGE is a federal office, not a cabinet-level department. So, where does its authority come from? Who's really in charge? Who's watching them? These are all things we got to keep an eye on. But let's move on to something else that was a huge focus during these first 100 days. Immigration.
Big campaign issue.
Oh, yeah, front center. And Trump made it clear from day one, things were going to change. I mean, one of the very first things they did was shut down that CBP One app.
The one for migrants to schedule appointments at the border.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So right away it was like, nope, we're not doing things that way anymore. And then came the executive orders, a whole bunch of them.
You see.
Okay, so we've got a second national emergency declared at the southern border, which gives them the power to deploy troops and really crack down on the fentanyl situation. Then there's designating certain drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, getting rid of Biden's Family Reunification Task Force, suspending the refugee admissions program for 90 days, ending the CNHV parole program.
That's the one for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, right?
Yeah, that's the one. And, get this, they even tried to end birthright citizenship.
Wow. Big move.
Huge. Basically saying, if you're born in the U.S., but your parents are undocumented, you're not automatically a citizen. That's a big change with major implications for the future.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just new stuff, right? They also brought back some old favorites.
Oh, yeah. Remain in Mexico, more border wall construction, travel bans from certain countries, all that came back.
Classic Trump.
Right out of the playbook. They also revoked this guidance from 2011 that basically said you couldn't arrest undocumented immigrants in places like courthouses or schools. That's gone now.
So a much tougher stance across the board.
Absolutely. But they also did some new things. On March 1st, Trump signed an executive order making English the official language of the U.S.
Interesting. Symbolic, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. But then, a few weeks later, they brought back that CBP One app, but they rebranded it as CBP Home. And the idea now is self-deportation. You come in through the app, schedule your deportation, and then maybe down the line, you can apply to come back legally. It's a whole new approach.
So encourage people to leave, but give them a path back.
Exactly. And they didn't let the court stop them. They went straight to the Supreme Court, trying to get at least part of that birthright citizenship ban put in place while the lawsuits were still going on.
So a lot of legal maneuvering as well.
Oh, yeah. But one of the most interesting moves, legally speaking, was when they invoked this super old law called the Alien Enemies Act.
From when?
1798. It's this old law that's usually used during wartime to deal with, enemies of the state.
And they used it for immigration.
Yep. They said they were going to use it to deport suspected members of this gang called Tren de Aragua. Now, a federal judge actually blocked it at first, said it violated due process.
Makes sense. It's a pretty extreme law.
It is. But in the end, they went ahead and deported 250 suspected gang members to El Salvador. They said it was a national security issue, so they had to act.
Wow, that's a big statement.
It is. It shows you how far they were willing to go.
But speaking of immigration and law enforcement, there's this whole other thing we got to talk about. The Laken-Riley Act.
The new law.
Yep, signed into law on January 29th, the first piece of legislation of Trump's second term. So what does it do? Well, it makes it mandatory to detain any undocumented immigrant who's accused of theft or assaulting a police officer.
No more catch and release.
Exactly. And it also lets states sue the Department of Homeland Security if they think they've been harmed by an undocumented immigrant, or if they think the feds aren't doing enough to enforce immigration laws.
So giving states more power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, right after they signed the Laken-Riley Act, they also put out this memo saying they were going to expand the Guantanamo Migrant Operations Center.
Guantanamo.
As in Cuba.
That's right. Now, this isn't the same as the detention camp, okay?
Yep.
This is a separate facility, and they were saying they wanted to use it to hold up to 30,000 migrants who they considered high priority.
30,000? That's huge.
It is, right. And they sent over 1,000 troops down there to get everything ready. We even saw reports that a couple hundred migrants had already passed through the facility by early March, but then it seems like they hit a snag.
What happened?
Well, there were the legal challenges, of course. Everyone knew those were coming. But there were also these logistical problems. Apparently the tents they were using didn't meet ICE standards, and it just became this whole mess.
Yeah,